Yet is home ownership out of reach for most people?
Maybe not as far as they think it might be.
Moving forward with the Decker team. Moving forward together with the Decker team.
So we're excited to welcome you to another episode of Life's Inside Track. I'm Yetta Decker.
I'm Ken Decker.
And
we're with Sean and Roz Woodland.
Good morning.
Yeah, from Woodland Realty Investments.
Good morning.
And so we're grateful that we get to share techniques, thoughts, tips, and tools that we all need. We all deserve. You, I, everyone, so we can turn our house into home, our families thrive, and we live the best life possible. In this episode and segment in particular, we're going to consider, can I afford, do I want to afford the house that I lay my head down in at night? Do I want to own it, or do I want to rent the space?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good question, because as house prices have increased, budgets haven't necessarily increased with them. So it's getting tighter and tighter. But really, are you paying your mortgage or are you paying somebody else's mortgage? Because most landlords don't take a deficit. So they're charging the rent that's required to pay their mortgage and expenses.
So let's unpack that a little bit. I think Sean and Roz have some insight into that, because at one point you were tenants and
Yes.
happy to be tenants.
Well, I was happy to be a tenant.
Okay.
Not me.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about that. Because did you realize at the time that you were in essence still paying a mortgage, just not your own off?
Yeah, it didn't fall on me. I didn't receive that at all. I was very happy living in an all-inclusive apartment. It was very safe and very comfortable. And if my turquoise fridge, went kaput, I could just call the landlord and say, I'd like another turquoise fridge, please.
But do you think they would get you a turquoise fridge?
Well, I think they had a lot of them in surplus from the 70s, yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Sean, however.
Oh, me, I was, sorry. When I was there, I'm like, well, why are we going to fill somebody else's mortgage up? Why are we going to pay somebody else's mortgage down and let them have all the benefits of that? Why don't we start doing that and pay our own, build our own equity so we can get ahead?
Okay. That's a very good thought. I know when we were young and we were renting for the first several years as a couple, and I started adding up, and back then it was like, I said, we just paid like $50,000 in the last few years, and we have nothing other than a roof over our head and
that was
security.
important.
That was important, and yet we had nothing to show for it. Like if we moved out, all that was gone.
Still at zero.
Yeah. And so the thought that, can I afford it? Because that is really what happened for us. We said, well, we can't afford to own it because we don't have the down payment and it's going to cost more than renting. That's generally speaking not the truth, right? But we didn't get that at the time. So if you think you can't afford it, first, I think it's a mindset shift.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you can live somewhere for 30 years. You can rent for 30 years and walk away and have nothing, or you'd be mortgage free, even if you did it in the slowest way possible.
Fascinating. The slowest way possible. You'd still own a house.
You'd still own a house, yes.
And you've been in the real estate market while you were in it previously. You had some experiences, and then you rented for a while, and then you got in the real estate market again. How many years ago?
6 years ago.
Only 6 years ago?
Only 6 years ago.
Okay. And what's happened in real estate values in 6 years?
Well, it's been a bit of a roller coaster. They were very appealing in 2017. They're not quite as appealing now, although it's still entirely possible if you know when you know.
Yeah, and I think the question is, we started home ownership how many years ago, 35, 30?
35.
Yeah, and so even if we were still in the same house that we found actually a hard time to buy, right?
Oh, it was almost impossible.
And what was-
$54,000. And it was
our first
like
townhouse.
the world to us.
And it was a
right?
freehold, no condo fees.
Right? Wow.
And in Quebec, not even in Ontario. Like, we couldn't afford to buy in Ontario. Well, we could initially, but it was pretty sad what we almost bought in Ontario.
But it's amazing that even after just 2 years, that property had gone up. We bought a new build construction in Osgood, and we could afford, now that property was $128,000. And 2 years later, whether our income or I think it was a mindset spending shift.
Right.
Because as soon as we were homeowners, it was different. It was a different mentality in our spending, I think. I'm just realizing that right here on the show. This is crazy. And what happened was we started prioritizing what we wanted to put money into. And when we sold our townhouse, it sold for more. We had extra
Only
money.
a couple of $1,000s.
Well, after all the different things.
yeah.
But because we were only in there 2 years, real estate's more that long term. But now I look like, if we'd been in that for 30 years, what's it worth now? You know,
Who knows?
even if we took the slow road.
I want to make sure Sean Roz actually shares a quick story about Christmas gifts.
Well, it's Christmas gifts. When you think how many people you're buying for children, grandchildren, cousins, aunts, uncles, parents, it just gets out of control. And the truth of the matter in my family is that nobody needs a $20 gift or a $50 gift. We're not in need of anything. We would just go out and buy what we wanted, right? And then, but when you add those things up, plus the cost of hospitality, plus I always like to set a really nice Christmas table, like it's adding up into the thousands. And I'm more than 21 years old, so I've been doing it for a while. In over 59 Christmases, right? It's a substantial amount of money. So saying, well, I can't afford a house, the math tells a different story. Even if I was spending $2,000 a year, and it was many years was more than that, that's more than a healthy down payment at 10% on a house.
Never mind 5%.
Right, exactly.
Because we got so many options today, right?
Exactly. Right. So that we can have a mansion with that as a down payment.
Yeah, and if I just wanted to throw in, like, Roz and Sean are part of our community. You may feel like you're part of our community. And if you want to stay connected at a deeper level, then the way to do that is send us an email at together@deckerteam.com. And then we can stay in communication and build a relationship that's two ways, as opposed to just, maybe you just listen to our show or watch our show and you feel connected to us, but we don't know who you are. So we would love to connect that way.
Yeah. And as we think about what you're both saying, and Sean, this is your turn, temporal, like things that don't really have longevity in them, but give you instant gratification. Sometimes we spend our money on that stuff and lose the opportunity to buy the house.
Yeah, there's times I've gone and I've spent thousands of dollars on surround sounds and TVs and video games. And when I was younger, I mean, I've done that once recently, and it's like, oh, I could have put that as a down payment on another house. and sometimes if we shift and wait till later to get the gratification, that might be a better win to have your home.
So I think the question is, what is possible with what you have now? And we love this because we're positioning you to build wealth wisely. It's about more than just the money.
Moving forward with the Decker team. Moving forward together.